You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is the Midnight Mystery.
5. I don't really know why I even came to this stupid party. It's not as though I know anyone here particularly well. All old friends from a high school existence I have more or less forgotten. An evening of misremembering people's names, awkward small talk, and cheap wine. 4. But it isn't as though I had anything else to do on New Year's Eve, beyond laying in bed and plugging up my ears against the sound of fireworks and drunken revelry. And it would have been rude not to accept the invitation, wouldn't it? Though in all honesty, I am unsure whether or not my absence would even have been noticed. 3. It's all just so utterly shallow and pointless. A gathering of puppets jerking along on their strings and making meaningless noises to one another. It makes me sick to realize I'm one of them, to have my stupid, superficial existence revealed for the facade it is. I can't even revel in the perverse schadenfreude of knowing I'm somehow superior to this gaggle of vapid not things. Deep down, I know that I'm just like the rest of them. Empty, hollow, useless. 2. After the party, I'll have to go stumble home, drunk and feeling worse than if I had simply slept through the whole thing. Reminded of the pitiful life I lead, and how wholly and completely unremarkable I am. How totally indistinguishable I am from the other idiotic inhabitants of this rotten, befouled planet. I'll sleep through most of tomorrow, the poison of the previous night's alcoholism painfully draining away as I steel myself for the rest of the week's torturous return to the office and the monotonous clockwork repetition it represents. 1. I close my eyes and brace myself for the cheers, the fireworks, the noisemakers, and all the other obnoxious irritations typical of the holiday. And what an especially stupid and nonsensical holiday it is. An arbitrarily decided date by which the Earth's rotation around dear old Sol is measured. The fundamentally meaningless passage of time being celebrated as some sort of achievement. It's pathetic. Insects cheering into the void out of a sense of pride over their continued existence. But there is no cheering, no fireworks, no noisemakers. All is quiet. It is the purest silence I have ever experienced. There is not so much as tinnitus to interrupt the smooth nothingness. For a moment I fear I have gone deaf. I open my eyes. I look around the room slowly, my conscious mind taking a moment to process what I am seeing. Everyone and everything is still, perfectly still. There is more movement from the inmates of an abandoned wax museum than there is from the inhabitants of this room. I observe one partygoer, a young woman by the name of Dongmei, seeming to float a foot above the ground, eyes closed and mouth open in a noiseless cheer, her legs tucked up slightly as though she were jumping. But the verb float implies at least some degree of motion, some level of activity which feels wholly inaccurate. Despite her elevation off the ground, Dongmei appears as solidly immobile as a beetle trapped in amber. All of the other attendees seem similarly frozen, wholly and completely still to such an extent that it feels impossible that they ever could have moved in the first place. It feels as though such motion would be incompatible with their very existence. A violation of the natural order as preposterous as expecting a dropped object to fly upwards into the sky. Despite the surreality of my situation, I do not feel panicked. In fact, I do not feel much at all. My emotions are almost completely dulled to what is happening. I feel nothing but the psychological equivalent to the same sort of numbness one experiences with a local anesthetic, a faint pressure like a ghost of sensation, as the doctor fiddles about with your deadened limb. I am still able to move, and I do so. The faint clacking of my high heels against the tile floor is the only sound that penetrates the all-pervading silence. I walk out of the living room, past the totally motionless objects that feel now more like abstract sculptures than living human beings, and move to the lobby. I open the door and step out into the night. The motionlessness and silence is not limited just to the house. The entire world seems shrouded in a thick stillness that suffuses everything. No wind rustles the fallen leaves. The moths hang in the air, unmoving, around the bulbs of the street lamps. I look up at the sky, but there is no moon, no stars, just inky, endless black. I walk through the streets beneath the overhanging nothingness, my own footsteps seeming somehow profane in the sacred quiet that has engulfed the entire world. I do not know where I am going. I simply walk forwards, one step at a time, observing my surroundings passively as my feet carry me to some unknown destination. I am dimly aware that I am not simply wandering. I have a goal, but whatever it is has been occluded from my conscious mind. My legs robotically continue their automatic motions as I peer through the lit windows of houses and apartment buildings. Inside, the forms of human beings, frozen stiff as though victims of a gorgon, stand in poses of celebration, milliseconds away from the completion of the midnight countdown. But time has stopped, the countdown is interrupted, and they exist now between the moments, caught betwixt 1 year and the next by the gap of a single heartbeat. It's impossible, I know, but deep down I can feel that the world has ceased to spin upon its axis. Even the tireless rotation of the earth has been stopped dead in its tracks. I do not know how long it is before I reach the river. I do not think it would be possible to measure time in a world where it no longer exists. I look out across the still, mirror-like surface of the water, reflecting back the lights of the city and a black canvas devoid of stars. It is the most perfect thing I have ever seen. Beautiful, isn't it? I am startled out of my reverie by the sound of another person, a fellow violator of the pristine silence. The voice is clear, smooth, and tinged with a faint accent which is impossible to place. Somewhere Scandinavian, perhaps? Their sex is similarly indeterminable. I turn my head to the left to see who had spoken. They stand not 6 feet away, looking out towards the river. I realized that I had noticed them previously, but their silence and stillness had led me to believe they were just as inanimate as the other inhabitants of this lifeless city. They are wearing a long hooded coat, their hands tucked into their pockets. Their faces obscured beneath a mask of some sort. As they turn to look at me, I recognize it as a porcelain comedy mask. I cannot see their eyes. They begin to speak again. At the end of time, everything will be as it is now. Silent, beautiful, dead. Not that life was anything but a triviality anyway. Despite the mask obscuring their face, the stranger's voice is not muffled in the slightest. It rings out clearly, each word enunciated perfectly in the still air. I nod politely at their observation. They continue to speak. There is no real, appreciable difference between that which is dead and that which has not lived. The emphasis on death as an especially noteworthy, or in some way profound occurrence, is simply due to the exaggerated importance that the living place upon their own transitory state of being. Life is a mere abnormality, the briefest of blips disrupting an otherwise uninterrupted eternity of everlasting silence. For every single meaningless speck of vitality cavorting about, proclaiming its own greatness, it is surrounded by a trillion uncaring corpses. The speck can make as much of a fuss as it likes, parading around its unnatural animation as though such a coincidence of chemistry is some sort of achievement. But in the end, everything stops, everything dies, and the speck rejoins the corpses once again. The emotional numbness is beginning to wear off, a sense of creeping dread sending shivers down my spine, but in its place is a very tangible physical paralysis. I want to flee from this stranger with their smiling, pallid mask, but my limbs are locked in place. I am trapped in my own body, an increasingly terrified mind screaming for freedom in a prison of petrified meat. You think you understand what I am telling you, but you don't. There is no possible chance of you having the slightest knowledge of the absolute truth. These words, they're just abstractions, imperfect analogies. To truly comprehend, you must see. With that, the stranger takes a blackened, rotten hand from their coat pocket and lifts it to their face. They begin to pull off the grinning porcelain mask. Happy New Year! My screams of terror mix with the enthusiastic cheering of my fellow partygoers as the noisemakers and fireworks go off with the conclusion of the countdown. I look around in wide-eyed confusion as I realize I am back in the house, back at the party. I unconvincingly try to masquerade my frightened sobs as some exaltation of happiness and excitement before slipping out the door and making my way home. Nobody follows me, and I hope that the others were too distracted to notice the look of distress on my face. I look up to the sky and laugh at the twinkling stars overhead, practically weeping with joy as my ears detect the distant sounds of fireworks and laughter. My route home takes me past the river, and I shudder involuntarily at the sight of a dark-clad figure, but breathe a sigh of relief as I realize it is only a drunken reveler, slurring the words to Auld Lang Syne as he staggers his own way home. I wish the man a happy new year, and he flashes me a comical salute as he stumbles past. As the man's mumbled singing recedes behind me, I hear a crunch underfoot as the toe of my shoe collides with something brittle. I look down to see the shattered visage of a porcelain comedy mask, smiling up at me from the pavement.
And so, we close another chapter here at the Midnight Mystery. Tonight's tale might have sent shivers down your spine or left you peeking over your shoulder. But remember, fear is what binds us in these enigmatic hours. If our story tonight stirred something in you, or if you've got a chilling tale of your own, we're eager to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments, or better yet, email us your own horror story. Who knows, your tale might become our next episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe to join us again when the clock strikes midnight. Each episode awaits to take you deeper into the unknown. Until then, keep the mysteries alive in your mind and the darkness at bay. Good night, brave souls, and remember, in the world of the midnight mystery, the most terrifying tales are always yet to be told.